Today we're breaking ground on a fresh parcel of land right in the centre of our fictional Dutch city of Noevorden. This high density build will lean heavily into creating a walkable, bikeable commercial hub. That sounds like it might be tricky, however, the real challenge today is making sure that the buildings actually look like they belong in the area. There's a real lack of medium density commercial assets available to us, and I reckon you might be pretty interested to see what I end up using. As always in this series, I'll be focusing on the areas between the buildings just as much as the buildings themselves, and that's what really makes a difference when we're trying to create believable cityscapes. On top of all of that, there's a load of new assets that have hit the workshop this week, perfect for Noevorden, and I'm going to cram as many of them into the video as I can and show them all off to you along the way. Last week's episode had a little bit of everything. An historic village area built around Titan's beautiful church, a new park, new commercial and hospital facilities, an entire new neighbourhood of lower cost housing, new tram routes, new trains, a compact city interchange to keep everything running, and lots more. Last week I asked in the video if anybody recognises where the inspiration from this build is coming from. We had one keen-eyed viewer, Icky, who correctly stated that it's Bilmeer, a neighbourhood in Amsterdam Zuidoost. It's got a really interesting history and will definitely be revisiting for inspiration later down the line. Now this is going to be the build area. Forgive the jumpiness here, I think we had a bit of an autosave on the go when I was moving the camera. But there's something that I want to do, and I talked about it in the previous episode, and I'm going to just get it in place right now. And that's putting in a bit of a local tunnel. I've got this stretch of land, a little road to nowhere that I'm going to convert into a tunnel now, and I'm going to hook it directly into the city centre. So I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment, and we're going to track and see just exactly where the traffic goes. I want this to service that side of the island and very much act as a local route or a local shortcut, so they don't have to use the highway and they don't have to clog up our interchange. So it'll be interesting to see just exactly where the traffic is headed. Another bit of work that I'm going to have to do is basically down to you guys. I'm going to have to sort out this member shout out. We're at the absolute limit of how many names I can cram in here without getting too small. Thank you very much guys for all the new memberships, it's really appreciated. Everything that comes in memberships gets spent on the channel, whether that's subscriptions, equipment, or getting an editor to help me out and get the videos out a little bit quicker. On that note, I'm looking to try and get some midweek episodes out if I can, and that just wouldn't be possible without a bit of extra help. So I've just made a really basic temporary connection for the time being. Obviously the little road to nowhere that we have converted into tunnel, that can stay, it's perfect, you know, it's ideal, it's got a use now, but we can see that it's not being overused. It is relatively busy, but it's not too manic. Over on this side, obviously this is all ugly, we've got a ton of networks converging in one place, so that's going to take a bit of work and it's going to be a fun little challenge to do in some future episodes. But you've got to excuse the mess for just now, it is all temporary. But let's have a little look and we'll track these guys, and they all seem to be going this side of the island, which is good. So they're essentially bypassing our compact interchange that we did last week. It was getting really busy, and I think I checked 5 of them there and only 1 of them was going to the other side of the railway. So that's a bit of a result. I think we can take a little bit of extra traffic over here if it means that we're really helping out that interchange that's struggling. I want to talk about another comment I got when I was building those distribution centres. So they heavily featured the DHL and the FedEx vehicles from Tomix. Tomix had asked me if I had any suggestions. I suggested these and he delivered the goods. We now have both DPD and post-NL vehicles. And how good did they look? They look absolutely superb. Now these guys aren't just going to be looking good in the city, and they are actually going to be functional as post vehicles. You can use either set as actual working delivery vehicles in your post offices. So you just click on post office, look for the pull down menu here, and you can basically choose whatever is going to be servicing these particular assets. Now obviously it doesn't have to be a Dutch one, it can be any postal service you want. In future episodes, if we do more dedicated distribution centres, then potentially we can use Starqueu's service blocks, have an industrial warehouse type asset or ploppable, you know, directly over it, and we should be able to do, you know, custom themed working distribution centres, which is really cool. So just gonna have a quick look, see how everything's working here. Interchange was looking good, our tunnel entrances are looking good, and I think that's really helped the traffic. So this is going to be our build area for today. We've got a number of temporary networks that we need to sort out, but otherwise we're pretty much good to go. I'm going to kickstart things by really completing this main arterial into the city centre itself. Now I am going to lean heavily into commercial. I want commercial in pretty much everything that we're going to do today. However, some of the assets don't quite match up with what I'm looking to achieve. So fronting this main road in here, I'm going to actually use the back of the building, and we're going to add some props and give it the look that, in fact, that is the working, functional side. Around the other side that is functional, I definitely don't want those gardens in there, so I'm going to use the static ploppable assets. Same asset, just ploppable version, and what we're going to do is we're going to hide these gardens, and that is going to basically form the first block in what will be a main shopping street in the city. Now, pedestrian and bikes are going to be at the heart of this build, so at every opportunity we just need to make sure that all of these connections do hook up. I would have loved to use this asset by Kiwi Sim. This is the Kinsman Plaza. Unfortunately, the total mesh is just too big for this particular part of the build, too much open space and parking, so we are going to use an alternative. And this is the Continent by Vlad Delesh. So I'm going to use two of them, we'll mesh them together, and that should give us a nice unique little development there, and I think that looks a bit like a hotel, modern hotel. I think I'll definitely run with that. So now that we've got it hooked up to some roads, let's just have a little check how it sits in the rest of the build. Yeah, I think I'm going to be happy with that. Now, where we have this large block of buildings here, if you can remember from previous episodes, that is one from the skyscrapers pack, and then we've got a couple of static ploppables to basically hide the surface car parking. I want to extend that road or expand that road and make it much wider. I want trams running through here, and I'd like to have at least one lane dedicated to vehicle traffic. This is going to be a bit of a collector road down here, so I just want to make sure that we've got enough capacity for later on. When I upgraded that, it did break the road, unfortunately, so what I decided to do was just get rid of that underground parking that we've put in previous episodes and just redraw the entrance and exit. Now, it still might be a little bit close to the junction for my liking, but unless things get particularly busy, I think I'm going to keep it. And what I'll do, in fact, is I'll extend the underground element of it, and I'm going to do a little bit of an underpass, really basic one for the bikes. Feeding the bikes directly into that junction almost is what we're doing just now, and it was causing a bit of congestion, bit of traffic back up there as well. So I think certainly as we expand over here and make this part of the city significantly busier in future episodes, I think it's going to be a good idea to make sure that we've got some uninterrupted traffic flow for those bikes to function. Now, we're going to give this road a little bit of a wiggle and move it. This, of course, hooks directly into the junction and again will be a lot busier as we build out in future episodes. There's going to be quite a bit of development on the other side of this sort of financial and shopping district, and really I want to plan for that future expansion and that future busyness that we're going to see on the road networks. Beside our hospital here, I'm going to create a little bit of an access road and just tidy things up a little bit. There is pretty good traffic from this hospital already. The ambulances tend to be in sort of fairly constant use, and what I would like to avoid is really just having a stream of ambulances coming down our pedestrian roads. So we'll give them a little access road directly onto the urban highway that we have here, just a short section, and I think that would make sense. Now, I really disliked the markings that we have in between it. I thought potentially we could maybe just shift things along with move it, but it really didn't have much of an effect. So I'm going to use El Gendo's road decals, and we're just going to cover up some of the more egregious road markings that really just don't make sense there. Better Bulldozer comes into play and we'll get rid of some of the props. Some of them are just in the middle of the road. I think I should have got rid of one of these, or maybe a couple of these streetlights as well. They are a little bit in a precarious position, but whatever, we'll leave it for now. So back onto our shopping street, and again I'm just going to be using vanilla assets here, vanilla commercial assets. I'm pretty much going for the most generic looking ones. When I say generic, I mean we could fit them in any city. There's no real defining features on them. But we'll have a play about with them, shift them into position, and really just try and create some strong blocks here. What I'm aiming to do is to give every street a nice vista. I think I mentioned that in episode 1, and that really forms the basis of how I try and build things in this city, especially in our higher density or medium density areas. Now, as I was doing the hotel area, I was putting down a bit of underground parking. I initially had this one from Grooney, same as what we've used in our housing estate, but as this person quite rightly pointed out, it's not connected, it's a one-way system. The cars do in fact have no way to get out, and of course I don't notice this because I usually play with notifications off. So we're going to swing back round and we'll give them some exits. And here we're going to be using this little asset here, which is lovely, fits in quite nicely, really compact, and that'll give us exits and entrances all on the same street. So what I'm going to do, in fact, is I'm going to focus our detailing a little bit earlier in the episodes. Like I mentioned again last week or maybe the week before, that I'm going to try and finish, little mini areas before I sort of move on. I'm not always going to do it, I'll be completely honest, but I think it kind of makes sense, and it does break things up a little bit for me and keeps things a little bit fresh in my mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bit of surface work, some basic prop work, and we're going to add some vegetation. Keep an eye out for the new vegetation assets that we have. I will pop them up on screen when I'm using them, but you'll absolutely want to download them. We've got bushes, we've got long grass, we've got a new tree as well. 3 assets in fact, all from the same person. They've done a beautiful job. Shout out to Piccana for them, they are absolutely gorgeous. Now, some of you might notice when I'm doing this section here that our bike lanes are part green and part red. I think there's a bit of an issue with the road adjuster mod that we have, so not too sure if it's on my end or if it's my problem, not 100%. Usually when I get it, I'll kind of reload the game, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, they should all be red. I'm not changing them to green in case anybody's wondering. So as I said earlier, lovely to see some really nicely detailed vegetation, and that long grass, we've really missed that, haven't we? And I think that will help us, especially when we get into detailing small little areas of the city. It's going to help kind of cover up a little bit of jankiness here and there where we need it. So again, back to the buildings, and again, another vanilla asset. I reckon what I will do is make it a little bit more generic by removing some of the signage, and then we'll give it a little bit of a recolouring to just make it look a little bit more neutral. So along the side streets and around this particular section of road, obviously this is the back of buildings, I'm going to use some of the Japanese storefronts. They are perfect. Now obviously I'd prefer maybe if we didn't have the Japanese writing on it, but I'm not going to zoom into that too much, we'll let that one fly. But it does look good from a distance, and I think we can absolutely get away with that being something of a, a busy commercial street up against that main road. The main road, of course, I'm going to keep that fenced off so people don't just walk out in the middle of the road. But other than that, I think we're pretty much good to go, and we're going to repeat that, as I said, around the side streets as well, and actually along the main street where we've used that static ploppable. That's going to give us the frontage that I want on the road, but the people aren't just walking through walls. Well, actually sometimes they are, but at least there's a shop front to it and it's a little bit more believable, right? Directly across the road from what we've been building here, I want to extend that shopping precinct, that shopping district, and I'm going to use the Chinese library here. I think it's a really striking commercial building, and I think it absolutely belongs here, and it fits the rest of the buildings quite nicely. Again, I'm going to use the commercial. This is not commercial, it's a mixed if I remember correctly. So we've got some residential and we've got commercial in the same building, but from an architectural point of view, it's nice and plain, nice and blocky, and it kind of fits the city centre vibe that I'm going for. This here, I'm going to be using some of the Japanese ones, a little bit smaller in scale, which helps bring the skyline down a little bit towards the hospital. I think it makes sense. And I think we've got a nice little variation in that part of the street now. The next part of the city is going to be inspired by some of the big department stores that you'll find in Amsterdam. And this actually came up in a comment as well. Now, ironically enough, the department store that they are mentioning here, I have actually been in there, and my wife ended up with a nice handbag, so lucky her. They also mentioned there about Lidl's and Aldi's, and I've looked at them in the Netherlands already, and certainly in the big cities, and they don't tend to have the big supermarkets like we have in the UK. I'm sure they do exist, but certainly not in the city itself. They tend to be part of maybe mixed use buildings quite often, and yeah, I'm going to have to try and find a way of figuring out how to put them in. I'm not sure if we have any Lidl or Aldi decals in the workshop or even assets, but we'll definitely look to get them in if they arrive. Now, I wasn't really planning to add too many tall buildings here. I really wanted to kind of stick medium, but I reckon having a look at Rotterdam and whatnot, and again, kind of mentioned it previously as well, that we have these blocks and then part of the block we have a much taller element to it. So I think it makes sense. I think as we add more blocks here later down the line, we'll continue in that sort of vein as well. Now these are ploppables here, and we're going to use the blocks as well. I had a bit of a torrid time actually trying to get these things to work. Now usually they work perfectly fine, but for whatever reason they just did not like that particular stretch of road. So I don't know if it was picking up elements from behind it, perhaps maybe some invisible networks, but I ended up ripping them out, and I think I'll show you later on that I'm just going to actually put little buildings in there and then hide them with the big department store one. I thought about maybe leaving a little bit of a open area here, but in the end I decided just to block it off. Again, we'll use a little bit of a static ploppable here, stick a storefront on it, and we are good to go. The first of the mixed use buildings, I had a little play about with them, didn't particularly like the pink to go with that, so I decided to swap them out and just mix and match a little bit, and decided just to use a smaller one here. We'll put it in and we'll kind of give that impression that these things are put in at different times potentially, but it gives it a little bit of a variation. It kind of breaks up that monotony somewhat. Now all of the buildings so far have been completely functional, whether that's through either just being a vanilla asset or adding service blocks, but here I'm going to make it non-functional, and frankly it's because I don't want any traffic on this particular road. I want to have that pedestrian only 100%, so I am going to leave them ones essentially completely non-functional, and I'm okay with that. That was the big vanilla office signature building, and it looks pretty nice actually without all the mesh and parking and whatnot. Now I did have a comment about creating an underground. As you can see, we do have an underground network already. We have a single line with I think 4 stops if I remember correctly. But today we're going to create the second station, or the second line rather. We're just going to have a short one from the build area here just to our central station, and we're going to leave it at that. It is basically going to be one for expanding in later episodes. But I am going to come back and I am going to extend line 1 as well. But now I want to show you some brand new assets that we have from Un Maestro. He's added a full complement of GVB public transport assets. This is the Public Transport Company of Amsterdam, and we're going to be having a look at the subways, buses, trams, and even the ferries. So as we're on the subway, let's take a closer look at the subway asset. I think the colours are spot on. We've got all the decals there as well. Even got a little wheelchair access sign on there as well. Nice attention to detail. Lovely addition. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Now you will notice around the front there that you have that destination board that you might have seen on the buses and the trains, in previous episodes. They don't work properly on mine. I need to install a couple of mods to get them to work, and they mess up the recording with OBS, so I'm not going to be using that particular functionality, but they should work completely fine if you decide to get those dependent assets, or dependent mods rather. So I'm just going to use the menu and make sure that we have the trams running now. So here you see that the normal trams are coming in, and hopefully we should see the new Amsterdam style ones coming out. Lovely. So we can take a little bit of a closer look here. I think having the extra carriages certainly makes a difference. Obviously the colours, the decals and all the rest of it is pretty much spot on. Beautiful work. So why don't we take a quick look and just see how they compare to the real life ones. Well, I'll tell you what, not far off are they? Now there are a couple of buses here. I'll give you a little bit of a closer look on here as well. Again, we've got the branding and the decals. There are 2 versions of buses. You've got the normal one and the electric. And now we can take a closer look at the ferry as well. Now I've just popped down a couple of stops here. We will of course be adding numerous ferries as we really get onto the waterways later on. Again, we've got that destination board there that should work, providing you've got the right mods for it to work. But I love this. I think once we have these scooting about all over the city, it's going to look absolutely lovely, isn't it? Really happy with these ones. So there we go, that's the first ferry route. It's not going very far, to be honest, and we got maybe 1 passenger per trip, but it is a start. And obviously as we build out the rest of the city and have more destinations, then it's going to make a bit more sense to have a proper network of these things and have them buzzing all over the city. Now that same part of the city that was shown there with the ferry route, this is essentially the location where I've decided to extend the underground. It's a really, really busy part of the city. Traffic can be really backed up sometimes, and it's super busy for pedestrians, super busy for bikes as well. So what I decided to do is just extend it. This next stop will be the end of the line. It will then go to the first commercial section that we've done, into Central Station, then it will head up towards the museum district, and then it terminates currently at our university. So that's going to be 5 stops altogether on line 1, and of course we've just got the 2 stops on line 2 that we've just created. Now this was working quite well, but we had a problem there that you've probably seen, that pedestrians were just disappearing through the ground as they connected, and the reason for that was that the connection from the invisible road with the park in there behind it was just not set up correctly, and so I decided to delete that, just draw a new one in, new invisible path, and people should hopefully be using the stairs and continue to do so, but I think that's looking an awful lot better now. I really did want to put in McWelshamann's Jacobi Kirk church asset. Absolutely beautiful stuff. I am definitely going to find for a place for it eventually, and I would like to keep it somewhere nice and central, somewhere busy, and have it as a bit of a contrast to all of the more modern buildings that we have in here. And much like the example in Utrecht, it will very much represent, again, like we have in last week's episode, a little conclave or a little mini neighbourhood or village that was originally there and has been encompassed and surrounded by the modern city. So I'll definitely find a spot for it, but today is not going to be the day, unfortunately. So as you might have saw there when I was yapping, I just took out those blocks and put little buildings in there instead. So we've got a series of commercial buildings, and then we've just got them within that department store facade. Now with the new trams up and running and this area coming together, I decided just to hook up a couple of tram stops and make sure everything's working, but there seems to be a little bit of an issue here with the tram stops, and I don't know if it's just the length of the new trams or whether it's an issue with this particular section of road, but I did notice similar issues elsewhere in the city as well. So I think the tram network is going to need a little bit of a rework, and I'll just demonstrate and show you just exactly sort of what's happening here. You can see they come to the stop, come back in the other side, head back out again, reverse, and then head off on their journey. And that's assuming that they don't get stuck and despawn. So a little bit of work to be done on that one. So I reckon what I'll probably end up doing is do it on a live stream. I've got one planned soon-ish. I've got a little bit of a maintenance plan, if you like, for the city. There's a number of things that I want done, and they'll probably be kind of time consuming, and I could do with a bit of company while I'm doing it, keep me sane. But it's the kind of stuff that really stops me putting episodes out, and I think I may as well jump on and at least try and get some sort of content out of it more than anything else. So keep an eye out for that. I will try and get the dual stream set up. I couldn't get it done in time last time, but I'll probably be on YouTube, probably be on Twitch, so whatever platform you prefer, hopefully all going well and there's no disasters, I should be on both of them. I'll send a ping out on the Discord when I'm going live, so if you don't want to miss that and you're interested, then Discord's probably the best place because you don't really tend to get notifications reliably on either of the platforms, quite frankly, when I go live. Now, as I sort out a little bit of basic surface work here, I wanted to create a bit of an area to kind of keep kids entertained as well in the city centre. It's going to be one of these amusements, you know, where they rock up with trucks and set up various different rides and stalls and all that kind of stuff. But what I want to do then is to extend it a little bit around the back and create something for the adults. So again, we're going to have another little market on the go and make it look like a nice little activity plaza, so to speak. All of the work that I'm going to do on here I think is relatively self-explanatory, so I'm probably just going to shut my mouth for a couple of minutes and I'll let you guys enjoy the little mini build. Alright, so I think that is that for all of the detailing and prop work here on the surfaces and whatnot. We'll just turn the lights down, have a little look and see how that looks at night. And I think that looks like a fairly pleasant little mini plaza. So we can move on from that particular part of the build now and move a little bit south. I say south, I'm not really sure which way north or south is, but we're going to go down towards the bottom of the map, I suppose. And I do like the green roofs on here, but I think it's just a little bit too identifiable as the modern promenade pack. So I'm going to get rid of some of the grass here. I'm just going to put down a bit of a dark decal, which I think gives a bit of a dark roof effect, I suppose. I'm going to keep a little bit of greenery on the other one, the smaller one, just for added effect. But now it's really time to sort out this area and make it look like a living, breathing part of the city. We're going to kick things off by creating a little bit of a wonky bike network here. We will make this look better, I do promise you. Surface work that we have here, I'm really just going to mirror what we saw in the first section that we finished off there and use some of the same surfaces. Again, Elgendo's French surface pack coming in to play as usual. We've used it tons in this city and we are going to continue to do so. Now that big gap, I will need to address that. First thing I want to do though is just cover up the grass. You can use surfaces, a lot of the surfaces will go over the actual bike path themselves, and we don't want that. We want to kind of show that off. So a few little decals here and there, and it does work quite nice. It's quite easy to apply. Now to fix that chasm that we have and make sure that we don't have broken limbs and broken heads, I am just going to use J's pillars. So good having these on PDX now, and I am going to put a couple of them down. We're going to sink them down, and then we're going to apply a little bit of surface work here, and we'll have a little bit of a mismatch in surfaces and textures. So we've got obviously the decals, we've got the pillars, we've got a little bit of concrete surface work, and then obviously we've got the actual networks themselves, the bike path and the pedestrian path as well. But I think it looks pretty good once it's done. It gives a nice little variation, and we've got a little bit of a mess, which is quite nice to see. But anything looks better than having that huge gap that our Sims are going to fall down. So the finishing work that we've got planned here is I'm going to have another plaza. It'll be more of a kind of grown up plaza, and there won't be any kid stuff on here. We've got the challenge, which is quite similar to the episode that we have, the My Most Detailed Build one, where we did all the bike networks and we had different various modes of transport. We had road network, we had some vegetation stuff, plenty of props on it as well. But it's really a kind of challenge putting all of these kind of different networks together and really focusing on the spaces between them to make it kind of believable, something that you might see potentially in a Dutch city. That is my aim anyway. I'll leave it for you guys to decide whether or not we pull it off. There's quite a bit of work to be done in this section, and again I think it's all pretty self-explanatory, much like the kids plaza that we've done and the market. I will probably shut my mouth and let you guys enjoy a little bit of a mini build again. Before we take a final look at the build today, I want to just swing back over to our interchange and just see exactly how it's doing. As you can see, it's working beautifully well. I've been keeping an eye on it as we've been building, and the good news is it's got plenty of capacity. I am going to be extending a bit further out towards the city where we have industrial and add some residential out there, so that capacity at least we have to work with. Now, I did notice despite adding plenty of residential, our actual population is going down, and as you can see here, I've got it highlighted, we've got a pretty high death rate. Now, we've seen high death rates on the channel before and it didn't end well, so this is something I'm going to have to keep an eye on, but let's hope that we're not going to have the same fate and the same issues that we had in Cape Lomond. The other thing I want to point out here actually is the unemployment. Our industry didn't have much of a dent on unemployment because we added more residential, but that commercial certainly seems to have solved quite a bit of it. So happy days on that regard. Hopefully as we add more commercial, we can bring that number down even further. So we checked out capacity on one of the 4 main interchanges, or entrances rather, into the city. Plenty of capacity over there, and the good news is that this one we get plenty of capacity as well, which again, as I mentioned earlier on, I'll get big plans to make these a lot busier again in the future, so there's not too much wiggle room. If they're not working now, they definitely won't be working in the future. Really happy with this. We got a nice shopping precinct, nice bit of leisure in there for the kids, and I'm really happy with that. In terms of the skyline, we haven't made any huge massive changes other than, you know, our big tower there around the back. All of the kind of medium sized buildings I think are appropriate for what we're trying to create, and I think we've managed to again mirror that along this arterial coming into the city, and again this will be busy later on as we build out our old town. So I'm really happy with future capacity that we have here, and I think we are going to be solving problems ahead of time. Our more adult plaza, if you like, again, it's an awkward little space, and I think we've got something that you would see in a major European city. Pretty happy with that, and again, we're bringing all these different networks together: bike, pedestrian, subway, road, and I'm really happy how it's all came together. So that's it from me, guys. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.